everyone. Thanks so much for joining another episode. We are going to be having a battle of the big cities. As you know me, I'm Ugo Renze. I am a London-based agent with Onyx Property Team and Keller Williams. But I'm excited to have Erin Wheelock, who is a Keller Williams colleague out of New York City. And we're going to be talking about our fabulous cities, what we like about them. And we're going to let you decide on where is the best city to live right now in this moment. So before we dive in, Erin, tell us about yourself, your team, and why you love living in New York City so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me, Ugo. I also love London, but for today's sake, New York. But I have a team here in New York City. We service Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Queens. I've been in the real estate business for 11 years. I'm a broker with Keller Williams here, but I've been living in New York City for 14 years. I can't believe it. I love this city. I feel as though, similar to London, it has an energy, right? You just get outside and you're just inspired to go hustle and go make something happen. It's a city of dreams where dreams can come true. I think the saying, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere is very true because it can also spit you out. But I just love the energy. I love the big buildings. I don't mind not having a lawn to mow. So lots of fun things I love about this city.
Well, it's funny because you've been in New York for 14 years. I've been in London for almost 12, and I moved over from Washington, D.C., having grown up in New Jersey. So definitely appreciate what you're saying about energy and where you kind of identify with. So for me, what I love most about London, which I think is really quite unique, is its sense of cosmopolitanism, which New York obviously has, but you just really feel so connected to the world here, right? And so when I got here, I was like, oh my God, where you've been my whole life? Like, this is the place for me. I'm a global citizen. And really, I think London represents that and lives that day in and day out. So you meet people from all over the world who literally have just arrived or been here for the last few years. And that's really exciting. And like you, we give up many things to live in a big city. I think London does a great job in terms of a little bit more green space. We can talk about that, but obviously we don't get the sunshine that New York gets. So we've got to make it up with our different ways of having our outdoor space. So that's great. All right, so in terms of the metrics we decided we're going to talk about today, one of the first things, speaking of which, is our green space, right? When talking about our parks. So I'm going to let you start in terms of what parks do you want to highlight for us in terms of if you're living in New York City, this is what makes New York City fabulous to have a picnic and come hang out.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So I think obviously we have Central Park. It's the biggest park. It's in the middle upper half of Manhattan. It's huge. Something I love about Central Park is you can go in the middle of the park and just be completely lost. You don't remember you're in New York City. It feels great because you're in the middle of the city, but you can't see the city. I actually live right off of Central Park. And there was one day that I went into the park and it was so foggy, I couldn't see the buildings and I got lost because I was like, what direction am I going in? But it's just so great, right? You have the pond in there, etc. We also have Prospect Park in Brooklyn, which is a great spot if you're living out in Brooklyn. And I think Fort Tyrone is the most forgotten park that is amazing at the top of Manhattan, and that's also where the cloisters are at. I think it's forgotten, but it's so beautiful. It is absolutely gorgeous. Take a book. There's flowers everywhere, trees. Those are my top picks.
Okay.
All right. What does London have for me?
Those sound pretty interesting. Well, you can't talk about London without talking about Hyde Park, which is one of, I think, 7 royal parks of London. It's, I think, got like 300 something acres. I think the nice dynamic about London, overall speaking, is though, apparently there's like a statistic that 75% of people are within a 15-minute walk. So while we have the Hyde Parks, which are mega and massive, and like you said, you can be in the middle of it and you're completely lost. And it too has, I think, the Serpentine Lake. It's got a couple of galleries in there. It's got the boating pond, and that really makes it very special. It's got the Princess Diana Memorial. It's endless. So that's quite lovely. I think it's relatively flat, so I don't think it's, that different as you stroll along through it, but it's a cool park. One of the other ones I would mention is Regent's Park in Northwest London. Just as you kind of get outside of Zone 1, Regent's Park has got the Queen Elizabeth flower garden. It's got like 12,000 roses and things like that. It's got the London Zoo is in there, so that's pretty special. A couple hundred acres of parkland that you can walk around and stroll and things like that. And then probably as a third park, which is also, I think, another world park, is St. James's Park. It's in prime central London. And if you're at Buckingham Palace, you'll see Green Park on one side, but St. James's on the other. It's really sweet. It's much smaller. And it just seems like this magical little flower garden. So you've got a lake there, you've got some resident ducks, but really pretty, and it's probably not as well known as the other parks, but if you really want just some serenity in the middle of the city, St. James's is definitely worth checking out. So next up, we are going to talk about our museums. And obviously, both these cities have incredible culture. There's endless things to do, whether it's street festivals, galleries, events, shopping, what have you. So the culture aspect is endless. But if you were to highlight a few museums or things you like to do for culture, what would you be recommending?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't not start with the Met. We have the Met Gala. I love fashion, so I got to start with the Met. That museum is absolutely spectacular. It's on the Upper East Side. It's very close to the Guggenheim as well. But I also like one of the newer museums a lot, the Whitney Museum down in Meatpacking. They just have spectacular different exhibits. I think they have a Hopper exhibit right now. And I think they do a really good job of changing things up. And it also has a cute outdoor space and cafe like a lot of our museums have. But also, Night at the Museum, where everything comes alive at the Natural History Museum as the movie goes. So that's another fantastic museum, and they're actually expanding it right now. So they have the History Museum, which is huge. They also have the planetarium. And one of the things that I love is they started doing overnights at that museum. So you can actually pay to have an overnight there for the weekend. They have adults only and ones that are family friendly. And then the planetarium, they also do party nights where they'll have kind of ravish type things going on, but it's in the planetarium, so you can grab a drink, dance to the disco, and weigh yourself on Mars at 10 p.m. at the planetarium. So
it does. I think the museums are actually doing so much more like that to really engage people and make it exciting. So we've definitely seen that here in London as well, where we do have the late nights now, which is Friday or Thursday night, and really makes it like a fun event after work, right? So I think they're doing a great job. Speaking of the Met, obviously we've had these movies and things created about the Met. Is it the first Monday in May, which is fantastic, the gala event. But you mentioned it's on that museum mile. So I was recently in New York over the summer, and we spent a fair amount of time at the Guggenheim, which is fantastic. But walk down to the Met and along the way, it's just a beautiful, really beautiful stroll along that museum mile. So that is pretty special. I will grant you that. And while we don't have the museum mile, what we do have is Exhibition Row, and that is in South Kensington. And to highlight that, I'm going to talk about my favorite museum in London, which is the V&A, the Virginia and Albert Museum. I feature it regularly on this channel. And what I like about it, you talk about fashion, it's really a museum dedicated to fashion and textiles, and just not your typical painting. So it's really special. They've got a fantastic Africa exhibit going on right now in terms of fashion and featuring some incredible artists. They've had, exhibits about the making of pearls, which is incredible. And they've got one, I think, going on in male masculinity and things. So you can really have a spectacular time discovering really interesting things across the world. But along that exhibition mile, we've also got, as you mentioned, we've got our own Natural History Museum, and it's just in a phenomenal building. So just the building itself is incredible. And I think there's a massive dinosaur, skeleton in the center of it, and that makes it pretty cool. I know before COVID, they used to offer those those overnights as well, which is, I just think would be so magical to go spend a night in the museum and
right?
Get a personal tour. So that is pretty cool. And so in addition to that, I'm going to also mention National Gallery and the National Portrait Gallery, which are in a different part of town in Trafalgar Square. So again, you can get to these galleries across London, but the National Portrait Gallery features incredible portraits throughout history of whether it's aristocrats all the way to modern day, contemporary, traditional, and that makes it a pretty cool museum to check out.
That sounds awesome. Also, I know that London does a really good job too. They just had the art fair there.
Yeah, I have to say, October in London is probably the most phenomenal month ever. We've got the BFI Film Festival, we've got the Frieze Art Fair, we've got the 154 African Art Fair. It's Black History Month, so there is endless culture going on. So I think you might have just tipped it in my favor. Thank you very much, Erin.
I don't know. I remember not saying it.
But yeah, no, it was phenomenal, and it is spectacular just to have these galleries from around the world. But you've got your versions as well of Frieze and 154, I know, but October makes it pretty special here. All right, now we're going to talk about food. Like 20 years ago, we couldn't have had this conversation because London was known for being pretty whacked on the food scene. But anybody who asks me now, how's London food scene? I said, clearly you haven't been here in 20 years because it is phenomenal. So we definitely can hold our weight as a global city for cuisine. But once again, I'm going to turn it over to you to highlight a couple of restaurants, which again, could be an episode in and of itself. But what restaurants are kind of hip or hot or trending right now for New York?
Oh my gosh. And we actually should do like a food tour in both places. That'd be phenomenal. I'd love to eat my way through London and New York.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So a few things to highlight. The Tin Building, it just opened down in the financial Seaport District. It is absolutely beautiful. It's a Jean-Georges collaboration with a few different markets. And they have a few restaurants inside of it, but it's fabulous because there's so many businesses down there and a lot of people are going back to work. So it's nice to be able to go to one food spot and have, 5, 6, 7, 8 different types of food all within it. So that's something that's fantastic that just opened that I think people should go check out. You can, grab an oyster here while you're getting Chinese food here. There's also a secret restaurant upstairs. So it's a great spot to go to. La Bernardin, I think, is one of the top restaurants in New York City. It is on the pricier side, but it is absolutely worth every penny. It is phenomenal food. And then I want to go with something local that I love, Mama's 2 Pizza. Oh, I'm drooling just thinking about it. Mama's 2 may be the best pizza I've ever had. It is on the Upper West Side on Broadway. I think it's 105th and 104th. Get there early because their slices will sell out quick. But they do like these square pies on focaccia bread. They have like a cacio e pepe on it as a pizza. They, also do your basic pizzas, but that is phenomenal. And then last but not least, if you enjoy tacos, Los Tacos is pretty amazing. Los Tacos number 2. The owner He actually was angry about the taco scene in New York City. He's like, none of these are authentic to what they should be. And he created Los Tacos, and it is just phenomenal tacos.
Well, he should come to London, because I do have to say that the Tex-Mex scene in London is sorely lacking. There are a couple of restaurants that are starting to come up. So it's great to see that someone has really identified that need for New York, and sounds like it's filling it nicely. So come on over to London and set up taco number 3 or something like that. So speaking of skyline and views, one of the tallest buildings, or the tallest building in London, would be the Shard. And so if you want a restaurant experience that includes incredible views, the Shard is definitely it. It's got multiple restaurants throughout, including the Oblix as well as Aqua Shard. So different types of cuisines you can book in, but along with not just having a fantastic meal, you'll also then have incredible views of London, assuming it's not so cloudy or not raining, but definitely a great experience.
Also, I think even from the bathroom, right? I think even the bathroom has stunning views from the Shard. I was like,
you don't miss a thing. You definitely want to make sure you take full advantage. So make sure you check out the bathrooms as well. Next up, I'm going to highlight down in South Kensington, which is a very popular part of town. You've got Daphne's for Italian, so a lot of people know it for that scene as well. Obviously, we have a lot of the high-end restaurants as well. Gordon Ramsay has got actually multiple restaurants. Obviously, a famous British chef called the Gordon in Chelsea, so that's definitely worth highlighting. But if we're going to give a shout out to a fantastic kind of local spot, I live in Queen's Park, and there's a fantastic Mediterranean restaurant called Carmel. And I really think that this restaurant is probably Michelin star worthy. It just has fantastic cuisine. Definitely book in for it, but it's got, they do like a roasted cabbage that's just phenomenal, right? So you talk about eating well and eating healthy, and they've got wonderful flatbreads as well. So I would definitely be putting that on the scene.
Love it. I'm gonna have to check it out next time I'm there.
Well, we wouldn't be property people if we didn't talk about properties. So ultimately, we want to talk about what can you get for your money, whether it's New York or London. Unfortunately, the pound has been relatively weak these days. So as an American, it's great for you. And we're seeing a lot of Americans coming in, taking advantage. But at the kind of 2 million price point, overall speaking, Erin, talk to us about what you might be able to get if you had $2 million to spend in New York City. What does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure, just like in London, it is super neighborhood specific. However, if you are looking for $2 million, you're either going to get an uber luxury building with a 1-bedroom, right? You're probably going to be around that 750 square feet. However, if you are looking for more of a resale, you're going to be looking at a 2-bedroom. It might be a little bit more dated, but that's really on average what you're going to get. If you do go further out, of course, you're going to get more for your money, but just on average, right? You're going to be looking at that really nice luxury building, 1-bedroom, or a resale of a 2-bedroom.
The trade-off might be, though, in that luxury building, your service charges, right? You're going to have to also be budgeting for those annual homeowners association dues, right? So all the amenities that go along with it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. Okay. For London, our property options are pretty vast, right? So to your point, you could go into a modern new build in perhaps areas like Canary Wharf or south of the river into Battersea, where you can get a lot for your money. If you want to stay kind of in prime central London, zone 1, that's where, to your point, it's, anything from 700, 800 square feet for 1-bedroom in a very classic, locations such as South Kensington or Marylebone, or you might be able to get a lot more. You might be able to get closer to 3 bedrooms, or perhaps even 4 or 5, as you said, if you're willing to go further out. So it's one of those questions, how long is a piece of string, right? Because you're going to be trading off. What we're seeing on average is prime central London is probably in the 1,200, 1,500 pounds per square foot, well in excess of that, into 4, 5, 6, 7,000 pounds a square foot, depending on what you're buying. So that just gives you a little taste. And that is something, if you are American, certainly coming from any other place other than New York, we have to talk to people about expectations, right? Because New York is the best place to say, okay, you're not going to get a lot of square footage. You're going to get the lifestyle. You're going to get the culture. You might not get enough space, but any place other than New York, they're expecting a lot more. And that is something I'm sure you have to deal with if you have out of towners coming in and having grand expectations of what they can afford.
Yeah, absolutely. But it does seem like we are pretty equal on that, which, like you said, it's great for expectations when people are going there or to New York from the other space. Yeah.
And finally, if for those international buyers that you're working with right now, what is the overall sentiment right now? Are you seeing a lot of people coming in right now? Is this exciting time to be buying in New York? Just overall for the international buyers saying, is this a good time? What's your overall sense?
I love that. Yes, it is an amazing time to buy in New York. We didn't go through the gigantic price hikes that other people saw during COVID. We hit our peak at the end of 15, early 16. We were coming down. We had a little bit of a bump up in 2021. Then interest rates brought us back down a little bit. It's a great time to buy. People are getting great value. And honestly, I feel a lot like New York is becoming more of a second home for people. I think a lot of people that bought here before bought second homes elsewhere during COVID. They didn't get rid of their homes here. And we're seeing a lot of people from other states buying second homes, and of course, other countries just wanting a piece of something in New York City. And they're getting things for great prices. So it's definitely a fantastic time to buy here. And rents are really high as well for people that are also looking to invest. So you can get a great price, put a renter in there if you just want an investment. Otherwise, it's a great time to snatch up some good products.
I love that. And your summary of New York could almost be exactly the same for London.
Yeah.
Number one, we didn't have the same, during COVID, we had the race for space, right? So everybody was clearing out. So we didn't have the massive run up post COVID, right? That a lot of the country was having, and all these competition and bidding wars. So our prices too kind of peaked around 2016 prior to COVID and has bumped along. So we had adjustments, but we didn't kind of fall off the cliff. And then we didn't have massive spike in rebounding as well. To your point, in terms of it being a great time, we are seeing a lot more international buyers. Definitely the Americans are able to take advantage of the dollar being so strong relative to the pound. So definitely Americans should be considering London as a destination if you are looking to expand and buy internationally. I love what you mentioned, and that the dynamic in terms of people owning multiple homes in New York being a second home. I've also kind of noticed that post-COVID, I think people are recognizing if they can afford it, they're going to actually have multiple homes. They want options, right? If I can work a little bit more remotely and I'm not tied to 5 days in one location for the whole year, even if we are being asked to come back into the office, people are recognizing now, actually, I want that secondary home. I want a primary someplace, or if I can afford it, I want that city experience, whether it's New York or London, and they're taking advantage of that. We're seeing the same thing. Interest rates are spiking. So right now it is a great time. A lot of our buyers are cash, so they're actually not as exposed to the interest rate dynamic, but they are able to take advantage of a weaker pound. So it's a great time. But obviously everybody's hoping or thinking there might be more decline in prices. So we'll have to see how the market bears that out. And the same dynamic on the rental side. So we've seen huge spikes since the middle of last year. So again, better yields. We don't get fantastic yields overall speaking, but certainly top rent is being achieved throughout London at this point. So great options for people considering where to put their money.
Yeah, it is kind of amazing how side by side London and New York are working. And I've always said that, New York's market is far less driven by what's happening in the world as it is what's happening with the policies in our government. Different changes to taxes and et cetera tends to just really affect our market instead of other things. And I feel as though London is the same way, where it's very policy driven of the market for it going higher in value or lower in value.
I would say that, but I actually almost say it's less, responsive to what happens locally. It's really more a function of what global investors are seeing. But to your point, that can be policy driven, right? Because Brexit definitely put a damper because a lot of international buyers, or especially Europeans, were really concerned about that. So that was definitely a policy driven response. But you're right. It's not the local iterations of jobs and interest rates and things like that, but more bigger picture, globally speaking, what's happening in other domestic places, right? And does London continue to be that safe haven? And I think it will continue to be that for a long time. But sounds like there's so many ways we could take this conversation. But for now, we're going to end it here. I think we've given people some great perspective on what makes our global cities fantastic. If you would love to vote on this, please leave us a comment as far as for right now, where would you want to be? If you live in New York or London, at any price point, where would you be voting is the top place to be right now. Erin, thank you so much. I can't wait to see you, whether that's in New York or Texas or London, because we both love to travel. But can't wait to see you again soon. Thanks for coming on, and definitely look forward to seeing the vote results. So please vote London, London, London.
No, I love it. Thank you, Uga.